I recently started a podcast series called Creative Block Clinic, and the idea is that I'm going to deep dive on a specific creative block in each episode. The first one was on perfectionism, so you can go and listen to that. And I'm going to be doing some more episodes on different creative blocks because I received quite a few to my story sticker. A few different ones that I have quite a lot to say on. But I wanted to do an episode on something that has been really live for me recently. And anyone who's in any of my courses or spaces at the moment knows that this is my vibe right now. I'm on a self-love revolution. I'm having a self-love homecoming. It's recently come to my attention that there is only one creative block ultimately at the root of all creative blocks, and I'm just going to give it to you today. I've already given it to you. It's not loving yourself enough. It's so simple that I think a lot of people will probably just check out at this point and just say like, cool, yeah, okay, never mind. Let me find some real advice, that's something I can actually do. But just trust me when I say self-love is the most important thing if you want to be somebody who creates and expresses themselves. So I've been deep diving on self-love recently, and I've been listening to this book. It's more like a lecture really, from Louise Hay. And she is a spiritual teacher. She has so many courses, books, lectures online. It's really easy to get access to. But I recommend listening to this lecture called How to Love Yourself. And anyway, today I'm going to get into 3 reasons that loving yourself is the most important thing to be creative, to be a artist, a creative, an entrepreneur, anybody who's birthing anything into the world and wanting to express themselves. So self-love, let's get into it. I've got 3 little points that I'm going to make today. So the first point I want to make is that when you love yourself, where you are on your journey is perfect. So we always feel like we're behind, or we compare ourselves to others, we compare ourselves to other timelines and different people's career paths and all of that kind of thing when we don't love ourselves. But loving yourself is a really active... Oh my god, my laptop is being so loud. Never mind. Loving yourself is a really active choice. It's a really active daily practice, and I like to think of it as treating yourself like you would treat your own child. So if you had a child, or maybe you do have a child, and let's say that they were at the process in their life of learning to walk or learning to talk, you wouldn't there's this Abraham Hicks quote that they always say, where they're like, you wouldn't say to a toddler who's stumbling and learning to walk for the first time, get up, you little dummy. And if you've ever listened to Abraham Hicks, you know what I'm talking about, because they always say that. But you wouldn't say that to a child. You would be like, yeah, well done, good for you, that's great. Obviously you'd say it you'd say it like you're talking to a kid, but you'd have this energy of I believe in you, you're gonna get there. Where you are is perfect. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you're falling over right now because you're a toddler and you're learning to walk, and that's beautiful. And so when you have that attitude towards yourself, you give yourself so much freedom and space to just learn and to just be in the learning process. For me, for example, I've been on the journey of entrepreneurship for a year or maybe a year and a half, and I can be so hard on myself when things aren't going as well as I want them to, or like when things aren't going the way I want them to or expect that they should, I can be really, really hard on myself. But if my business was a person, they would be a toddler, they would be a baby. They would just barely be walking and talking. So when I give myself that positive self-talk and encouragement of like, I'm doing great, like it's beautiful where I am on my journey, that's amazing. And just that, specifically to business or even just in life, like you're doing amazing where you are. You're learning what you're learning. There's no right or wrong time to have accomplished something or to have learned something. We're all here with a completely different blueprint, a completely different set of cards dealt. And so where you are is so perfect. And these are just empty words unless you say them to yourself. That's the magic. That's the magic of self-love. If you just hear me saying, oh, you are where you are and that's perfect, it's just a platitude. But if you really say that to yourself every day, if you write that on a piece of paper and stick it by your bed and look at it every day, like that's self-love. That's actually parenting your inner child and treating yourself how you would treat a child, because you wouldn't tell a child, oh, that kid can already do this, why can't you do it? You wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't, because you're a loving person. So extend that love to yourself and your journey will become so freed up to actually learn and progress. Because one more thing about this, think about what happens to a child when they're learning something and somebody does, like maybe that happened to you. Maybe when you were learning something, you did have somebody, watching over you and criticizing you and saying you're doing it wrong or comparing you. And if that is happening, it really limits your ability to learn. It really shuts down your growth mindset and your ability to learn, because you suddenly feel really inhibited. And so you can't just experiment and make mistakes and fall over and get up and try again, because that whole process is just very inhibited by the self-criticism. So the remedy to that is healing and self-love. Just love yourself and just pour that love into your inner child that they need. Okay, number 2, when you love yourself, when you don't criticize yourself, creating becomes fun. Not only can you learn, not only can you grow, but it actually becomes fun. I noticed for me recently, I became aware that I was dreading working on things that I actually do want to work on. So it wasn't a feeling of oh, I just don't want to do that because I don't want to do it. It was more just this weird feeling of dread and kind of anticipation of oh, something's going to be really hard and heavy and dense. But it was part of a project that I do want to do and I consciously chose to do and create myself. And I realized that the reason I was feeling that way was because of how hard I am on myself. I realized that I was finishing things and then just it was a cascade of self-criticism would just fall on me straight after my attempts and my efforts for that day. And when I realized that, I was well, of course I'm dreading doing it, because it's not fun when you have that attitude towards yourself, when you're punishing yourself, when you're being so hard on yourself and you're holding standards that are so high that you'll never meet them. Of course you're not going to have fun anymore. And it's not an adventure anymore. And it's not fun anymore. And it becomes dense. It becomes heavy. So when you love yourself, when you actively praise yourself and say, I'm so proud of what I just did. I'm so proud of the attempt I made today. I love myself even though there are mistakes, even though I'm still learning. That's beautiful, and I always will be learning. When you have that kind of self-talk and again, it's an active choice to speak that way to yourself. I've just started, and this is very inspired by, Louise Hay, so I do recommend listening to her lecture. how to love yourself. But she, she's just like, she makes it so simple. She's like, just talk to yourself, praise yourself. If you hear those self-critical thoughts, because they will still come in, but just don't let them spiral out and don't follow them and override them. You can even override them by saying things out loud, like, I'm proud of myself, I did well. It sounds so like cheesy, but it's so like, it's not, it's just good. It's good and wholesome, and it's good for us, and we deserve it. So that is the second point. And my final point for today is that when you love yourself, other people's criticism doesn't matter, because you become the sacred protector of yourself. And that is just so powerful. If you have this relationship with yourself where you're supporting yourself and saying, well done me, I'm doing amazing, good for me, like, I love myself, I back myself, and you have that energy of like encouraging your inner child, then if somebody else insults you or criticizes you or says something that like isn't personal to you, but you take it personally, like, you're protecting your inner child from that harm. And it's like, it's this bubble of self-love that protects you, and you're less likely to even be criticized, because people don't really criticize people who come across as very confident and sure of themselves and grounded. Normally people criticize like where they see a weakness or a weak link, where they can, where there's like a gap in your aura where they can get in. And I'm not saying that like you'll never be criticized or you never have haters or anything like that, but I really think that people who grow their capacity to be seen are the people who love themselves enough to have a very robust and strong aura, so that most of the criticism bounces off, and most of the kind of like hater energy or evil eye energy just can't really get to them, because they have such a strong, loving sense of self that keeps renewing their own energy so that it stays healthy. It's hard to penetrate, it's hard to get in when somebody has that strong of an aura. So yeah, love yourself. That's my message for today. Go and listen to Louise Hay, be inspired by her, and just talk to yourself kindly today. Whatever you're working on, whatever you are planning, whatever you're creating, even if it's like going into work and dealing with something that's a challenge, just praise yourself and just be like, I'm doing amazing, like, well done me, look at everything I've already done, look at everything I've already learnt, and now I'm at this stage and I'm learning this thing and I'm proud of myself. And like, if you're anything like me, you'll hear those thoughts and part of you will just be like, oh God, like, what? No, that's so cheesy, or like, that doesn't even make sense, or like it will try and like contradict it in some way. And you can even just like love that part too and just be like, I hear you, you're just hurt, you're trying to protect me, and I love you as well. And just love bomb everyone, love bomb the whole system. And I'm telling you, it will make a difference. It's already made a massive difference in my life. So there you go, that's my message for today. And I will speak to you in the next one. Bye.